Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Eastbound and Down, Season 1. So, I was kind of contemplating, it's like, okay, should I just do 3 episodes? Should I do the whole season? Considering it's only, it's 2 hours worth here. So, immediately I just decided, it's like, well, hey, let's kind of review the first season to kind of quickly build up to other seasons and so on and so forth. So, really for this season, we of course have the introduction of Kenny Powers. Of course, a major league pitcher that is to slowly but surely have his career start to decline, either because his own attitude or also just the fact that his 101 mile an hour pitches are starting to decline in speed. To all of a sudden, a 101 pitch is all of a sudden to be 88. So over a certain number of years. So we have Kenny Powers, who of course is uh, going from being this all-star celebrity guy to now just being this regular Joe Schmo, and he's having a hard time realizing that he is no longer, because he's in the limelight, being a celebrity all-star important guy anymore, and he has to deal with that fact, to where we of course have Kenny Powers, who consistently still has this illusions of grandeur, and that everybody is kind of fainting at the sight of him walking into a room, kind of thing. So because we have at some points where Kenny Powers does technically, for some people, have celebrity, or still like, oh my god, yeah, like I remember Kenny Powers, he's the pitcher of Atlanta, and like, yeah, and like you get that. But really you have a very select few people that really care, in all honesty. So that's just kind of sad. So we go on, we have Powers, who's to be built up as like this very confident guy who, again, is having these illusions of grandeur, to really have this kind of turnaround of just like, well, maybe if he wasn't so this way with people, maybe all of a sudden they would respect him more, and maybe all of a sudden, like, we're starting to see this character by the end of the season possibly have a change of who he is, but really towards the end of it, we're not 100% sure. And it seems that also, if we are to really root for this character, there are certain times where, like, Kenny does use certain words, or, like, just characters in the show use certain words, which I'm kind of like, did they really have to go with that in this show? Uh, like, there's obviously some lines where I'm just like, man, like, this is kind of like a word to make people uncomfortable, and to just be straight up rude. So we also have at some points where we have Kenny Powers, who's kind of this baby, this guy throwing tantrums, and like he won't stop shouting at some points. And so really, with both the positive side of just kind of wanting to see this guy turn things around, we also have the negative side of just like, man, this guy's a little much. But eventually we want to come to this kind of middle ground where it's like, yeah, this guy is offensive at some points, but we can still try to figure out how to uh, kind of hope for the best for him, and so on and so forth. So, with that said, really, I think that's all that I want to say in a very teeing up like sense for this show. Because I had seen this first season once before, and I was like, you know what, I want to kind of rewatch this and kind of be re-familiar with the show and its characters. And so yeah, so let's get into that double five time territory. Let's just go into this thing called spoiler time. Spoiler time is about that time I'm going to spoil this episode. So episode 1, of course, is to showcase that Kevin Powers, of course, was to be this major league pitcher with, of course, Atlanta. We go on and we have Kenny who is to be throwing the last pitch of the World Series, and of course his team is to win. And so we go on and we have Kenny, who is to, like, things are really going well for him, but it seems that his fastballs are starting to decline, starting to go from 101 to about 88 miles an hour. So it seems that one thing is to lead after the other, where all of a sudden Kenny is to be at a possible World Series moment again. And all of a sudden, this time around, we have a guy named Reg who is to be up to bat, who is to smack this ball and is to win the game for his team. Leading now Kenny going on and trying to blame anybody but really himself for this problem. He's going on and really just blaming Atlanta and saying that he wants to be a free agent at this point. Going on and making his way to San Francisco, where he is to say some kind of very offensive like things to some of his players, and we just see this character kind of further spiraling down into a point where it seems that nobody is to really uh, want him to be involved in any of these big, massive pro teams. And I guess Kenny never really realized to save up money, or that this thing won't last forever or whatever. So we then go on and have Kenny, who is just left to live back with his brother, Dustin, and a woman named Cassie. So we go on and we have, of course, Dustin, who's asking Kenny, it's like, well, hey, like, how long are you really going to live here? And Kenny's like, well, 4 years. Kenny at some point is also going on and mentioning at some point that he had given this family a tanning bed at some point, and for Christmas. And Dustin was like, oh yeah, that was like 3 years ago. And Kenny's like, oh wow, three years? Has it been that long that you've had that? So we have, of course, Kenny that is to basically get quickly, like, he has a very short fuse, very upset. So in this first episode, we have, of course, Wayne, who kind of jumps on to this jet ski that Kenny is to have. And so Kenny is to be very upset with Dustin's son, because it's like, well, hey, like, he has all these, like, these chocolate fingers and crap fingers all over, just smearing all over this jet ski. And so Dustin comes out there and he's like, what are you talking about? So we have it where Dustin is just telling Kenny, it's like, well, why don't you just sell this jet ski? Like really, it makes no sense for you to even have it. And Kenny does come to the growing up moment where he's like, well, yeah, I will go on and I will sell this jet ski so I could have money. But then he just turns around and is to go on and just have this jet ski just kind of hidden away somewhere, where all of a sudden Kenny and Tracy are just having their fun moments with Kenny, of course, consistently paying off this lady of the night, supposedly. So, and then Kenny at some point is hanging out with this jet ski with either Clegg or Kenny's best friend Steve, which we'll find out about that. So we of course have Dustin come to Kenny and just saying, like, hey man, like, you need to just get a job. Just get any job. Just get something. So Kenny goes on and just arrives into a school one day. And I don't know if Kenny really has any real qualifications to be a substitute teacher for anything. Like, I don't think he has the verbal qualifications, as this guy just flies off the mouth. But we go on and have Kenny, who is to meet up with Principal Cutler, and Principal Cutler's like, "Oh, Kenny Powers! Oh my God! Like I'm having like a starstruck kind of moment. Oh my God! I know exactly who Kenny Powers is. He's a professional baseball player. Yeah, like professional pitcher. Yeah." So we have it where like Kenny Powers is already won over or winning over this principal without him doing a thing. So we go on, we have this principal that's just like, yeah, like let's have you substitute teach for of course one of these gym classes should be easy enough. So Kenny Powers is also bump into April, which of course is to be his old flame, and I guess he was to pop her cherry when they were much younger. And so every time Kenny is to ever really just see April, he is just staring at her chest because, of course, like that's the only thing that he can just like he's just so latched on and just mesmerized by this girl's chest to the point of just hilarity. So we go and we have Kenny, who is to be just kind of quickly put on this gym clothes and going and teaching this class. And so immediately we have it where Kenny's like, "Hey, I'll be your new substitute teacher for today. You guys have any questions?" And of course, we go on and have one person who's asking, like, "Hey, do we have to run the mile in this class?" And Kenny's like, "I meant questions about me." Because Kenny again is to be this like, hey, I was a pro athlete and this and that. We had Kenny who, while he was in like pro baseball, he had accusations of possibly taking steroids, and so one of the kids asked him like, hey, did you take steroids? And Kenny's like, no, like I kind of worked out naturally. So we have Kenny that goes on and is to of course, kind of have one of the teachers who is to be a guy named Stevie Janowski, who is really taken by Kenny. It's like, ooh, like, hey, like, Kenny Powers, really a big fan. And so Kenny or Stevie is to introduce himself to Kenny and like at this lunchroom and Kenny's like, I've never heard of you. I don't know who you are. And Stevie's like, well, yeah, I used to wear a cape and this and that. And he's like, I don't know. Never heard of you. So we immediately have Kenny, who is consistently trying to win April over. And so Kenny immediately tries to hug on to April when she first meets her, or when he first meets her. And we end up finding out that April is actually to be engaged with Principal Cutler. And so Kenny is immediately thinking, well, I gotta sabotage this. Because we go on and we have Kenny that is thinking that this Cutler guy is trying to be him, and that, like, Kenny is the only real man for April, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so we go on in this episode and have Kenny, who's kind of like, who's going and finding April within her classes, and he's pointing at her, and he's like yeah, like I'm gonna win you over, and like I'm gonna get to you, and this and that. Where we have kind of April, who is to just kind of be wooed by Kenny, anyways, and we'll kind of showcase that later on in these episodes. So we go on, and we of course have Kenny. That's to go on and have a jet ski moment with Tracy, and this is kind of getting into the second episode of things, and we'll kind of bounce around a lot throughout the season. There's going to be possibly some like big grandiose moments that kind of play out here. So, or some big events that kind of happen through this season. And so we have Kenny going on and jet skiing with Tracy, and like Tracy is like consistently topless within the show. Like I don't know how many times we have to just see this girl without we're just seeing her melons flop in the wind. So we of course have Kenny that is eventually meeting up with April, and April is trying to get Kenny to be involved in a number of things. Trying to get him involved in like a dance, trying to get him involved in some barbecue, and so on and so forth. And I think that's within the very first episode that we have this kind of dance thing going on where Kenny goes on and he's like, well, like, or no, 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 no. No, Kenny has some like signing arrangement that he goes on and tries to do. Yeah, that's where we're getting. That's where we're getting with. We also have Kenny and a guy named Clegg that consistently goes and does like snorts cocaine consistently within the show, and we just see Clegg as this guy who's consistently trying to get high one way or another. And so really that's all that we have to know about that character. So we go on and we have of course Kenny that's trying to go on and get some fast money. And so he goes to this dealership that of course is to be owned by Ashley Schaefer. And so Kenny goes into this dealership and is to go on and be like, hey guys, like it seems like you guys are having this monkey that's holding the sign that looks very weird. Like, like it seems like this monkey's also doing the sign kind of almost seductively and whatever. So we go and we have Kenny who is telling Ashley here. It's like, well, hey, like Ashley would seem like a girl's name, and Will Ferrell's character Ashley is just like, well, yeah, so what? So we have it where Kenny is going on to tell Ashley, it's like, well, hey, like, do you guys really want some star power to kind of sell your cars? Like, hey, I'll come in here and I'll do a signing for you guys, and it'll cost you like $1,000. And Ashley's like, well, how about 100? Or I think he says like $2,000 or something. And so like Ashley's like, no, like I'm nowhere close. And so Kenny's like, well, what about like just like can you meet somewhere in the middle? And Ashley's like, how about 200? And he's like, sold. So we have Kenny turning around and wanting to do this signing, but he wants to be ushered in by someone. He doesn't want to drive this himself. He wants somebody to drive him to this location. And so, of course, Kenny tries to get his brother to drive him, and Dustin's like, no, like, I have something else going on. So, Kenny has to go and get Clegg, who is to be this kind of druggie, to drive him to and from this location. And so Kenny goes on and he is to eventually try and do this whole signing, but the further and further that, like, we of course have Kenny doing the signing, the more and more Ashley just wants him to kind of like dance like like a monkey kind of thing, where it's like, hey, like I paid you this $200, you better go on and put on this shirt, and you better go on and like I think dancing like a monkey is too harsh, but like he basically wants him to just consistently do all of these odd things to get this $200. So we go on and we have Ashley that's kind of telling this guy to wear this yellow polo, And Kenny is just like, well, hey, like I like to wear all black, and Ashley's, well, like not today if you want to get this money. So Kenny puts on the polo, and so at every turn and everything, like we just consistently have it where Ashley's like, well, hey, you're not gonna get paid. Uh, like if you don't do this, you're not gonna get paid if you don't. Like so, Kenny keeps trying to do everything, jump through all these hoops. And so at one point, we just have one fan of Kenny's that's, of course, wanting Kenny to just fire one in because this guy, I guess, was a catcher at some point. He'll catch the ball with his mitt. And Kenny's just like, well, you know what? No, I don't think I can do this. And so we have Ashley that's saying like, hey, you won't get paid if you if you don't throw this ball. And Kenny's like, no, like I'm like, if I go on and I do this, then everybody will want me to do it. Like I'll have to go on and like like live the rest of my life just kind of smoking it down the middle for everybody, and every rando person that I meet is gonna want this. And Ashley's like, well, do it or you won't get paid. It's like, Kenny's just like, you know what, like I'm done with this. So Kenny goes on, walks up, punches the guy that's trying to catch the ball, and Kenny just walks off. He storms off, comes back with this kind of cement brick and like tosses it into these cars, and then walks off because he's just so upset and so angry. So Kenny goes to this dance that of course April was telling him that he was chaperoning for, but Kenny didn't want to do any of that. He's like, no, hey, like I got another kind of arrangement that's going to go and give me money. I'm not going to go on and do this dance thing. And I'm sure this guy wasn't going to get paid for doing this anyways. So, or paid very, very much. So, Kenny goes to this dance instead because that's the only thing that he can do at this point. So, he shows up with Clegg, and so we now have like Stevie that's all like, yeah, like Kenny's here. And so all of a sudden, Kenny is to immediately make his way to April, and April's like, hey, Kenny, you showed. And Kenny's like, well, yeah, like, because I had another engagement, but I canceled it to come here. And so we have it to where Kenny is bizarrely trying to win April over by dancing. And so Kenny's going on and really busting a move here. He's doing these really lavish like kicks up in the air. I'm like, wow, this is actually some pretty cool stuff. And we just have this character that like this is an illusion of all the stuff that he's doing. He's actually doing all this stuff. I'm like, okay, this is like, so this is good that this isn't the illusion this time around, because we have Kenny at the end of this first episode who's kind of like strutting his way down this hall, and like all the women are like, oh my god, ah, and all the guys are like, yeah, you go, Kenny, even though like really Kenny's going down this hallway and no one could care less, but he's kind of doing this like, yeah, like he's doing this like John Travolta strut from like Saturday Night Fever, as if like everyone cares, and so on and so forth. He's like, yeah, yeah, and so we go on. We have Kenny, who of course is to uh, go on and be dancing, but then all of a sudden he starts like, whoa, and he starts to like, oh man, my heart and all, and so all of a sudden Kenny barfs, and then they're like, okay. So we just see Kenny in some other room where he's just kind of like working out like his like what was going on. And so Kenny was mentioning that it was the egg rolls that he ate, it wasn't the ecstasy that he took. And you would immediately think that like anybody hearing that this guy was to take ecstasy was like, dude, fired. But for this guy, it's just like, no, like let's just let it slide because again, he's this pro athlete and so on and so forth. So we push on into this show, and so Kenny and Stevie are driving, and like we also have it where Kenny is getting Stevie really drunk. And so what ends up happening is like Stevie, of course, is to be in the passenger seat, and Kenny is to be in this driver's seat. And Kenny crashes his car into some boat. But then all of a sudden, when Stevie is to come to, Kenny is to be outside Stevie's car, and Stevie is to be in the driver's seat. And so we have Kenny that's telling Stevie, hey, yeah, like, you're the one driving this car, remember? Like, you passed out. You're the one driving this car, remember? And Stevie's like, no, you're the one driving this. And Kenny's like, well, hey, Stevie, do you want to be my best friend? And Stevie's like, well, yeah. And it's like really not his best friend, it's really just his assistant. And so Kenny's like, well, hey, like you were the one driving this car, then Stevie. And Stevie's like, okay. So Kenny runs off because, of course, he has priors. And so we go on into this episode, and Kenny is realizing that, hey, since he's this big, lavish celebrity, I'm hoping that this is episode 3 because I don't remember which episode it actually is. We go on and we have Kenny who tries to sell merchandise of himself, going on and having all these autographed guitars and like masks of him and like all these kind of huge memorabilia pieces, all these like banners and all these like middle fingered foam characters and so on and so forth. And like we also don't have that. We also have Kenny who's listening to his own book through tapes uh, of Kenny like kind of doing this like motivational book that only like he can get motivated by. And so we go on, and of course we have uh, Kenny that's trying to sell all these items, and we have Cassie, who's Dustin's wife, that's deciding to help Kenny try to sell all these stuffs, hoping that they can make some decent money out of this. But we go and we find out, sadly enough, because I know a lot of people who would go on to like and try to sell things on eBay and hope that they can like, ooh man, I hope we can just get it like a breaking even thing. Like I tried like temporarily to just kind of sell some old things on eBay, and I'm like, man, I can't even like break even with this. Like, there's a lot of times where I just try to sell something, and I'm like, there's no way I can just like make up for what I even like closely bought for this. So it's just like, well, I guess I just got this money for this item. That sucks. Um, so we go on and we have Cassie that's trying to go on and sell these items for Kenny to eventually turn around and have one baseball bat that Kenny was to smack this homer on, but he also broke this bat. He was only to get like $7 for this bat, and he got really frustrated with Cassie because he's like, God, like, why is it that nobody wants any of this stuff? Like, and like we just have Cassie that's breaking it down to Kenny. It's like, well, like uh like you lived in a world of illusion, and now it's time to like come to the real world where like you were hot then, but now like you're basically uh like to turn around and like be forgotten. And it's sad because like there's a lot of times where there's a lot of people that of course have this one big thing to their name, um, but then you just go on and turn around and like it's not like they're ever going to get noticed somewhere, or people are just like, hey, like you look like so and so, and like yeah, so and it just kind of like sucks where it's like you may have this big elaborate following or whatever, and like you would have to go on and be like a Jacksepticeye or PewDiePie or Markiplier for anybody to be like, oh my god, I just met like Jacksepticeye in this elevator. Oh my god, just randomly. It's like, man, the really drastically changing of like a celebrity or celebrity of level of certain things where all of a sudden like a simple like elevator meeting, it's like, oh my god, oh, I just met that guy. um but also you have these guys that are now like going on and like doing things in other platforms and other kind of stuff, so it makes a lot of sense, like they're going on and doing commercials or movies or whatever. So we go on and we of course have it where Kenny uh is to eventually start to slowly but surely realize that, like, well, hey, maybe I should try to get back into the game. Maybe I should work out some more. Maybe I should go on and just take the easy way out and buy steroids off of one of my friends and start to just get injections and start to work out. And like uh we get to really see like Kenny just really like trying here, and we're just like, okay, yeah, even though he's taking roids, like still he's still trying. um but yeah, so we go on and have Kenny that's going to this barbecue, and now Kenny is wanting to try and have someone that could kind of make people jealous, and of course that has to be Tracy. And so Kenny is trying to have Tracy like, hey, how about you come to me this barbecue, just kind of look normal and just be normal for once. So Tracy is going on, and the only thing that she has as far as like a normal clothes is still kind of revealing. So Kenny and Tracy go off to this barbecue, and so we end up getting it where uh, Tracy at some point is hanging out with Cutler, and all of a sudden Tracy is to uh, start to kind of go back to her other ways because, of course, she's to get drunk and so on and so forth, and things are to start to slip off the woman. And so all of a sudden we have it where, like, kind of like Tracy is starting to reflect on Kenny, where all of a sudden Cutler is to of course get a little drunk and get a little tipsy at this barbecue and say that Kenny is to be nobody now, and like Cutler now owns him, and like Kenny is to be very upset about that, to the point of him just wanting to go on and like, you know what, if you weren't my boss I would punch you right now. And so Kenny just decides, just like, you know what, like I'm just gonna walk away. Like I just don't like. I'm just gonna leave. And like it's just kind of sad because we get it where like Kenny is trying to look good in front of people, and like yeah, like he realized that it's just go on and just sadly enough be a mistake. That it's just gonna be like, man, like how can I just go on and feel good instead of looking like a loser at some points. So we go on and we have Kenny who's just kind of spiraling in this sad and just angered place. And so we go on and we find that April was actually the one who was to buy Kenny's home run bat. And it's like, what's going to happen there? So we go on and we have Cutler, who is to, of course, be training for the triathlon. And so we, of course, in episode 4, go on to see that we, of course, have Cutler that's kind of going and riding his bike indoors. He's on this like kind of bike machine. It's like, hey, doing the workout. So we have Cutler who goes on and is to be watching this video, this kind of simulated like bike thing and so on and so forth. So We then go on and have Cutler, who's kind of feeling a little bit manly, and so all of a sudden he decides to go on with April to kind of just uh, what would be the perfect word here? Do the dirty deed. Let's just say, let's say that. So all of a sudden, while they're going on and doing it, we realize that these characters are to think about like taking a break during the motion of the ocean, and so we go on and we start to see that maybe this couple is like starting to go through the motions of their relationship. So we go on and we have, of course, uh, where Kenny, of course, goes on here and is to. I'm trying to figure out the perfect transition of it all. So I'm lost. I'm so lost. Let me pause here for 1 second. Oh, we also had at that same barbecue. We of course had Kenny that was to all of a sudden be in the same kind of room as April, and they start to lose control. They start kissing, and so on and so forth, which leads to Kenny all of a sudden uh, kind of pre-eventing before everything kind of pops off. So we then go on and have Kenny eventually somewhere down the road going on and telling April about that whole event and so on and so forth, which just kind of leads to uh, April and Kenny just kind of like they can't help themselves, and they're gonna go on and just consistently like um, be with one another. It's a consistent thing. So we go on and we of course have Cutler that goes through his triathlon event, and so what ends up happening after this triathlon event is that of course we have April that goes on and leaves Cutler at his event to go on and actually go and see Kenny at his event that we have later on, of course, during this show. So we have it where also Kenny is to finally, like, once he's realized that he is to have lost April at this barbecue, we start to have Kenny that starts to get all crushed and normal, and he goes on to just not even look at April and look at Cutler. He just goes on and does his job, and is to even get to the point where he's wearing these glasses. And so April's going on and is like, well, hey, like, you're wearing glasses now? And we have Kenny who goes on and he's like, oh no, these glasses are fake. Like I just wanted to just look all like crushed and normal like all you guys are, because this is where I am now. Like we also had the moment where Kenny was to go onto the PA system and like cussing kind of every other word and telling everybody that he's going to go and work as a full-time gym teacher, and at some point they're going on and like within this gym class performing like Thunderdome from Mad Max, where all of a sudden we have the principal that's to kind of walk in and be like, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And it's like, and so further and further we have it where the principal's just to be kind of shoved out of the room by Kenny going on and saying like, "Yeah, like could we like not have you even in this room? Could we just kind of have me just kind of do this teaching without you even being here?" And so principal's just like, okay, all right, like that's not normally what I do, but oh well. So we have Kenny that goes on and like thunderdomes it up with these two kids, and so but yeah, so Kenny starts more and more focusing on his gym career, and is to finally go and meet up with Stevie and tell him it's like, you know what, I think it's now time for me to go on and write another book that's to be spoken. Another book that's to be spoken. And so Kenny goes on and he is to mention that he's like 34 and he had retired from baseball, and he's saying that he's never again going to pick up another baseball, and that he feels like he's just going to go on and do what he has been doing, and that's it. And so we now go on and we have Reg, of course, a nemesis uh, of really just Kenny, forcing Kenny to retire, and which kind of doesn't really make any sense. But we just have, I guess, Reg, who's like, well, yeah, like the downward spiral of your career all came down to me. So we have Reg that is going on and wanting to continue to call Kenny out, to say, hey man, how about you throw me another pitch and I'll try to see if I can hit it. And because I'm going to go on and do like these signings at Ashley's, of course, dealership, and like, hey man, like you can come and like you can see me, and maybe I'll sign you something if you want. And so we have Kenny who is like, no, I'm never gonna pick up another pitch. I'm not gonna do this again. And so we have Kenny just wanting to just continue to be who he is, and it seems that this is almost like winning over April a little bit, to just kind of have no, I don't want this kind of Kenny. I want like the other Kenny, the Kenny that is to just have been this like aggressive guy that all of a sudden is like, it's kind of weird where we have when Kenny was to first meet April, he was to like have his back turned to her. And he's like, April, April, like, and so all of a sudden he like turns around. And he's like, yeah, it's me, Kenny. It's like, yeah, like we have these kind of these like weird awkward moments where like it just kind of comes out to be really funny, and I really enjoy it. So we're forced to now have Kenny more and more be pushed to do this event with Reg. And so Kenny is to be pushed to do this because Ashley is to mention that he has camera evidence of Kenny going through and putting bricks through his cars. So Kenny needs to go on to come to this event to throw this pitch against Reg. And so Kenny's like, okay, I'll just do this. So we go on and have this big la-di-da event where Ken is to throw this pitch. And so, like, the pitch is, like, sadly nowhere in the strike zone because, like, pitches are actually really hard to do. So we go on, we have Kenny who, like, continues to just kind of throw to get his arm warmed up. And so Kenny all of a sudden, instead of actually throwing like a strikeout pitch, instead we go on and we have Ken who freaking nails Reg in the eye, and his eye falls out. And so all of a sudden we find out that that pitch is 101, and we find out also that Kenny was like, yeah, I planned that for that to happen. And so we have it where, of course, like we have Ashley that's, oh my god, like let's get some mice or something. So all of a sudden April is to just be won over by Kenny and what he had gone and done. And we just have Kenny who's just chucking all these balls, and he's just cracking and hitting all these windows and cracking and hitting all these signs and everything, just kind of destroying this guy's dealership. So we have kind of Kenny and Ashley, or Kenny and Ashley, Kenny and April, kind of getting to the point of their like just so in love, where all of a sudden we get into the very last episode of this season, where we just have April and Kenny cementing that within this car, and that all of a sudden is to have like Cutler like realize this is happening, and so he starts to lose his mind and starts to go on and is to be like kind of a homeless man, or the man of a man of the wilderness, and is to just kind of like be off balance or be off kilter here. So we go on and we have Kenny, who, and here's a really funny part that I really liked. We all of a sudden had Cutler, who has this like chloroform in hand, and he's wanting to just kind of kill Kenny at some point with this gun in the back of his pants, and we have it where Kenny is wanting, of course, April to come with him, because we find out that this Tampa Bay scout is to want Kenny on the payroll for like to be a part of this pro team. And so Kenny's like, "Oh my God, this is amazing! This is great!" So we go on, and we of course have uh, Kenny that's asking April, like, "Well, hey, will you go to Tampa with me?" And April's like, "No," and she wants to just kind of stay here and cut with Cutler, because she realizes that like like she still has feelings for Cutler, so on and so forth. So we have Kenny, who is to just kind of see this opportunity as like, okay, Cutler, you won. Like, you won this girl over. I don't know why she's just picked you, but she picks you. And so Cutler's like, oh my God. And so that kind of brings him back to normalcy and sane sanity. And so Cutler goes home, and then Kenny realizes this guy had a gun in his back pocket, but like kind of in his back pocket, in the back of his pants. And so Kenny's like walking away with his robe and whatever. So, and I thought that spot was like really funny. So we go on and we just have Kenny, who's like ripping all ties from everybody he knows, and he's saying like, "Hey guys, well I'm going to Tampa. Goodbye everybody." Like all y'all and like all kinds of things. We have it where like there's so much where like shouldn't have Kenny have paid for like drugs from Kleb or Clegg? Shouldn't have anybody wanted any kind of payouts from Kenny at some point? But I guess all for naught. I guess. Um, so we have Kenny that's like saying his goodbyes, even to the point of telling Stevie it's like, because Stevie's thinking that he's going with Kenny to Tampa, and Kenny breaks the news to Stevie. It's like, well, yeah, you're not coming with me to Tampa. Like, you're just gonna stay here. And Stevie's like, no, like I did all these things to just like to go with you, and like I just effed everybody off. And Kenny's like, well, you gotta stay here. You're not coming with me. So, but Stevie has to go on and do one thing still for Kenny, and so we have Kenny going on and like pushing all these fire alarms and having everybody in the high school go out. And so we go on and we have Kenny, who is decided to do this like Bluetooth speech and go on and tell everybody kind of what he's learned through this time, and how he had to go uh, and get like plucked from heaven, which was the pros, to be now sent down to hell, and to go on and have to be a shining knight, that is to have every single one of these middle school kids be the chinks in his armor, and that we all of a sudden have Kenny going to this big elaborate speech about how he's leaving and so on and so forth, to all of a sudden have this big, huge, uh, like uh, like this big, huge truck that just comes in right as Kenny is doing this speech, and so Kenny's like, "Bah!" Like, can't this truck just move? Like, hey, like I'm almost done with my speech, and this Bluetooth doesn't really have far for me to just kind of like so. So Kenny just moves his truck and he finishes up and he's like, goodbye, everybody. And then he goes on and leaves. And so we have Principal Cutler that's like kind of sending the kids back to the school because he, of course, realizes it's like, hey, we can't go on and just listen to speeches all day long. So we have it where Kenny is going on and just kind of saying like goodbye to to his immediate family. And so all of a sudden at the end of all this, like April just decides to go on and is to go with Kenny after all to Tampa. And so Kenny's like, oh my god, like everything that I ever wanted is coming true. So Kenny all of a sudden is to go on and is to get this one last phone call, of course, from this Tampa scout. And so we have Kenny thinking like, oh, this is just some little tiny tweaking, correction, whatever thing. And so Kenny all of a sudden is to get the phone, and it's this Tampa scout, and he's saying like, well, yeah, like here's the thing, like I kind of told you that you were coming up to Tampa, because really, I wanted to kind of like either get fired or to go to rehab, like all these kind of things that are just to tell us that Kenny is not going to actually get this job. And so Kenny has gone on to say farewell and goodbye to everybody. And he's like, oh my god, like I now have to just, like, this is a fairy tale ending. Like, this should all just work out for me. And Kenny all of a sudden is just like, oh my god, like I just have to grin and bear it. And they're like, yeah, goodbye everybody, goodbye. Like I'm leaving to Tampa. Yeah, I'll go and I'll get him. Yeah. So all of a sudden, both April and Kenny are in this SUV. And so they all of a sudden stop at this gas station, and April's like, well, hey, do you want anything? And he's like, yeah, Skittles. So April goes to this convenience store to get Skittles, and Kenny goes and drops April's bag and then drives off without her. And April's like, oh my god, he left without me. So we all of a sudden see Kenny, who is just kind of like driving on, realizing that like nothing is ever just going to work out for him, or a number of other kind of emotions at this point, and that like there's just like there's no way for him to just pedal back. Like he just has to just just keep on doing what he's doing, which is to just drive somewhere. Like it doesn't matter where it is, it doesn't matter what it is. Like he's just gonna just continue to drive somewhere to hope that things just work out. So that of course is to be what happens for the second season. We'll see how that plays out. If it seems that people are interested in this, I will continue on. But Eastbound and Down, not a bad season. There's just some parts where there's just some characters or just some line delivery that I'm like, okay, like we're going in that direction. Like Will Ferrell and him going on like, yeah, I feel in my plums. We go on and we have like Will Ferrell as, we have both Reg and we have both Kenny, and we have like Will Ferrell who plays Ashley, who's like, yeah, um, like like me and my wife were two who became one, and all of a sudden like our son just walks in, and I told my son no, like he should watch like he should watch how like we create life and this and that, and I'm just like, what the fuck. And so So we go on. We have we have like it seems like Reg or like Kenny are like trying to crack at this point. Just like Will Ferrell is just going on and just like and he's comparing his lovemaking to how Kenny and Reg are gonna be two who become one. And I'm like, what the is this? What the heck? What is he talking about? Like all of a sudden he's comparing his lovemaking to this pitcher and this batter where like two are just gonna become one. And I'm losing my shit at this moment. And I'm like, what? Like this is ridiculous. But yeah, like we just have like Will Ferrell and his consistent improvising, where you have him kind of giving like this finger to Kenny, and Kenny is like treating it like a microphone, and he's like slapping it away. He's like, "Hey man, that's not a microphone." And we just consistently have Will Ferrell that's kind of like slapping uh, Kenny off to the side, or kind of slapping him via the nuts and whatever, and when Kenny tries to do that in kind, like Ashley's like, "Hey, like you don't play that game with me. I play that with you." Just so we go on and we have Will Ferrell, ever the improviser. Just like man, what a man. Um, I thoroughly enjoyed his one video with like Ryan Reynolds, where they're doing the one rendition of the one song, and all of a sudden we have like Will Ferrell who's kind of doing the high parts, and so yeah, like so kind of a funny video. So yeah, I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.